On May 10th, 1869, officials from both the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railways met at Promontory Point, Utah. They were joined by a host of others, including bankers, dignitaries, and railroad men, all of whom had gathered in the makeshift townsite for the conclusion of one of the grandest undertakings in American history, the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. When the last spike was driven into the ties, the assembled crowd raised their voices in jubilation. Major cities across the country were quick to join the revelries as telegraph spread word of the railroad's completion. A photograph was taken to commemorate the moment. Unfortunately, the photo was at odds with the railroad's true history. Although the image faithfully recreates the moment when the final spike was driven home, a closer look shows none of the 13,000 Chinese railroad workers who, according to Stan Steiner, built roadbeds and laid track for half of the transcontinental line, as well as parts of practically every railroad line in the West. So unforgivable was the oversight that the ghosts of some of the workers still haunt the line near Promontory Point today. The Pacific Railroad Act of 1862 set off a frenzy of construction, a mania fueled by greed and competition. Two companies, the Central Pacific, beginning in Sacramento, California, and the Union Pacific from Omaha, Nebraska, began laying track with hopes of meeting somewhere in the West. To connect the two, the act promised subsidy bonds and land grants to help the companies secure the funds necessary to lay track. Basically, the more track a company laid, the more money it received from the government. Naturally, both companies were eager to capitalize on the offer, and the owners of the companies recognized that hard-working, industrious, and reliable labor were necessary to win the race. But such men were in short supply. Immigrants from China first started arriving in the West in the heady days of the gold rush, eager, like so many others, to amass stores of unimaginable wealth. Even as the gold rush began to fade, the Chinese still came by the tens of thousands, drawn by the possibilities for adventure in an exotic environment. But life was not simple. Work wasn't easy to find. They were given only the most loathsome tasks and seen as unfit for honest labor. To their credit, the Chinese railway workers proved themselves tireless and efficient laborers. Soon enough, more were sent to blast and lay ties over the Sierras. Many died trying to conquer the heights, either falling from baskets suspended at the top of cliffs or perishing in dynamite blasts, but they succeeded. By 1868, the Sierras had been surmounted, and the vast plains of the interior lay open. Yet when the railroad was completed, these workers and those who had died to bring the railroad to the West were forgotten. Shallow graves were all the Chinese had to memorialize the dead. The number of dead is not known, but according to the newspaper accounts of 1870, 20,000 pounds of bones had been gathered from the graves lining the roadbeds. It's not surprising, then, that some workers' spirits continue to linger along the fruits of their labor. The once thriving camp at Dove Creek near Promontory Point was bust as soon as the railroad was complete. Its population of Chinese laborers left to seek work elsewhere. Over the year, numerous reports of strange activity in the area had been collected by researchers such as Earl Murray. Steve Ellison, a historian and park ranger, described to Murray how one night, while patrolling the old Central Pacific Railroad grade, he suddenly heard behind him a chorus of voices and footsteps. He smothered his voice and forced himself to listen carefully. There were voices! Distinct voices! I came to the conclusion that they were Chinese. He clearly heard voices say, American, a word he associated with his Chinese landlady in San Francisco. She had referred to all Caucasians with the term, and Ellison now found himself the subject of the ghostly patter. Then suddenly, there in the darkness, he saw what he could only describe as sparks fly from the spikes and rails, as if 100 men were pounding at once. Even in death, the Chinese laborers continued to work, as if to remind the forgetful that their contributions should not be forgotten. Today, the ghosts of Dove Creek stand as testament to the sacrifice and dedication of thousands of workers who gave their lives and skills to their adopted homeland.